What's up, peeps? Today, I want to run through some basic stuff for anybody out there that's possibly new to the hero's journey or they're thinking about starting. Um, yeah, I'm just going to get right into it. The hero's journey, I was initially brought on because I heard that you can play three classes in one, right? So that is, I would say, in the broadest way possible, that is kind of the biggest defining uniqueness of the server, right? Um, you can play three classes in one. This character that I'm on currently is a warrior cleric beast lord. Um, so what that entails is I get all of the warrior AAs, I get all of the warrior skills, I get all of the cleric AAs, I get all of the beast lord, so on and so forth. You get all of their spells that are available to them. You get all of their disciplines, anything that comes with each class you get, right? um so that is the main, like, I would say, like, the defining characteristic of the server. So when you start the game, however, you're only going to start as one character, right? Or one class. So you pick your class and you start, you're in your home city. um like, where do you go then? What do you do? um you're going to start with an item in your inventory that kind of briefly describes, like, hey, bring this to somebody in the bazaar. And then you're going to have a quest. Alt Q. That's let's see, it begins with the first steps. Or maybe yeah. So the journey of 1,000 miles is the first quest that you get. And it says use the bazaar and back to travel to the bazaar, right? So the bazaar in the hero's journey is like a central hub that connects then to the rest of the world. Every class, every character that starts gets, under the special tab here, this ability called the Bazaar and Back, right? And you're going to want to immediately put this on your hotbar, make a hotkey of it, stick it down there. I got my Bazaar portal here. And what this does is it sends you to the Bazaar. Pretty simple, right? If you click it again while you're in the Bazaar, it will send you back to the exact same spot wherever you were when you used it, right? So it's a little like port out and then you can port back, right? So it's very, very useful, obviously, because you can bank, you can, um, in the bazaar here, you have all of the class trainers. So, like, here's Bard, here's Paladin, here's Cleric, blah, blah, blah. All of the level 1 to 50 spells are available on these vendors here. And the bazaar is where you're going to be selecting your second two classes, right? So you start the game, your one class, and then you bazaar in, and it says it in the quest here. So if you follow the quest, deliver the faded writ, which is the item that you start. If you go over to the, what bank is this? The Southwest Bank. You can see right here is this guy standing here. You turn the faded page into him, and then the next step of the quest says gain additional classes speaking to the guild masters, right? So this is the part of your initial start where you go over and you pick your other classes. So we got rogue here, warrior, shadow knight, etc. All of the class, um, the guild masters and the vendors are all in the north section of the zone here. So if you hit, backspace, look at your map, it's this north part here. So both sides of the zone will have the classes that you can pick. All you got to do is you got to talk to them, hail them. You know, they'll reply and say, "Are you sure you want to pick this?" And you just say yes, right? So pick your second two classes, and then you go back to the fading memory, speak to him, and then the second part of the quest is to reach level 5. So that's introduction on how you just pick the classes. Now Now that you've picked the classes, how do you get around? Where do you go from here, right? Do you Bazaar portal back to your starting area and like do that from there? Well, like I said at the very beginning, the Bazaar is a hub to basically the rest of the game, and that is from this guy right here, Tyrrell. He's right in smack dab in between the banks in this building here, and you can see it's this dude with this map that's floating right here. So, cool thing about the hero's journey is that dotted across the world are teleport locations. And as you collect the teleport locations, they will click the map, they will show up as available places to teleport to, right? You start with a handful. You start with a handful, but in order to like see these gray ones here, I haven't been to these teleport locations on this character yet, so I don't have access to them. So as you journey throughout the world, you'll collect teleport locations, and it'll give you the ability to easily, move around and stuff. And I can show you. I'll just go to the East Common Lands here. It's one that you start with. You hit um, send me there. So what did it say? Yeah, you travel to waypoint. So click East Common Lands, travel to waypoint. Boom. Yes, I want to be translocated there, and it sends you there, right? So let me load up. You can see on the ground here this little pad looking thing. This is the teleport locations. So you just walk over it and you will have that added to the map. So that is, in a nutshell, how you're going to be getting around from place to place for the most part. I mean, once again, you have to explore the world first, but all of these things are saved to your account, right? So every character that you create afterwards is going to be using, it's account wide, right? So if you unlock everything on your first character, well, then every character after that will have, for example, like a really cool one on Antonica is Lower Guck, right? So I make a new character, well, I can already teleport to Lower Guck. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Um, so that is how you get around. Now it's nice. Yeah, so it's a very nice, convenient thing to have. Okay, so a couple of other interesting things to note. Just I got my notes off to the side here so that I try not to forget anything. So I might be cutting a little bit, but uh, interesting things to note is buffs if they're in your if they're in your spell book and you cast them on yourself, they last forever, right? So as you can see, I am a cleric, and my buff up here, Yelp 6, has a 36-second cooldown. That will stay forever, right? So there's a handful of classes that have, like Druid, for example, has a pretty good heal that lands in your buff slot, and that will last forever, even though it's supposed to normally last 36 seconds. So that's an interesting little um, perk for this server. Bard songs also operate the same way, although you do have to cast them every time you zone. So, for example, your Bard can have like 8 songs going. You cast them once, and they just stay there, right, for your time in that zone. So that's a pretty cool little feature. Um, let's see. There's specific weapons that you're going to want to pick out um, depending on if you're a caster. So if you're solely melee, you don't have any then it's not a big deal. But there are items around the world, and a lot of casters will start with one of these items, but they're called sympathetic items, basically. Um, and you're going to want to usually pick these up. So this is ignore all of like the massive stats or whatever, but if you look at the effect down here, sympathetic strike, this is 8. This is sympathetic strike 8. You'll start with a sympathetic strike 1. Basically, what sympathetic strike does is every time you cast a spell a direct damage spell that has 10 or more mana, this will also cast like a second spell. So you'll like double up on a nuke, right? It'll definitely help as you're going through the game. If you're casting a lot of spells, it's going to basically double your DPS or more. You know, as you level up, you can find Sympathetic Strike 2, which does more damage, and Sympathetic Strike 3, which does more damage, but the minimum mana cost always stays 10, right? This is Sympathetic Strike 8, requires 10 mana, so they all require 10 mana. The Sympathetic Healing operates in very much the same way. This cloak I have here has, um, and sorry, let me back up. When you cast Sympathetic Healing, you get a buff, and the buff is what procs the extra spell cast, right? So see up here, I have Sympathetic Strike 8 as a 4 hour long buff, and Sympathetic Healing 6, right? So you get the items, you click them, and they give you a buff, and that's what triggers the proc. So anyway, but you can see here, healing is a little bit different. Healing scales with mana, so and level of the spell. So as you can see here, as opposed to the sympathetic strike items only being 10 mana and a nuke, well, this is minimum mana 200 and minimum level of 40, right? So I couldn't use like a level 1 heal on myself over and over and over again to get the double heal, or the it's called healing burst is what the name of the proc is, but it heals you for a certain amount. So let's say this heals for 600 extra. Well, I couldn't use a level 1 spell to get that 600, right? You have to use higher level um, heals. And I have a weapon that has sympathetic strike 8, this hammer here. So this is sympathetic strike 8, but the minimum mana cost is 300 and minimum level is 50. I choose to use the sympathetic strike 6 because I use a 200 mana heal. I can't use this if I want to use my 200 mana heal. Stuff like that. So, but both of these uh, sympathetic procs are super, super, super useful. As long as you're casting spells, right? So keep that in mind if you end up picking a spellcaster. I don't believe they work with dots on spellcast any longer, um, but the heals work with buffs and stuff too. I don't know how relevant that is, but so yeah. So that's the sympathetic strike, the sympathetic healing items. Okay. So the next thing that I kind of wanted to touch on is dynamic zones and the echoes of memory, not echoes of memory. Well, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So dynamic zones are basically instances that you create. I will go to Shraza Temple because there's a DZ guy right at the beginning of the zone. So travel to waypoint. So there's a teleport pad right inside Shraza Temple, and then these guys, Echoes of the Past, are NPCs that you can hail, and they have them all over in basically every zone. Guk has one, but what it does is it allows you to hail them, and you can choose either a non-respawning or a respawning instance. Respawning has a 2-hour cooldown, so once you spawn the respawning zone, he'll say, "Okay, are you ready?" You hit ready. I'll just do it real quick here. So I'm gonna click. Well, let's do non-respawning. Non-respawning. So you get a little pop-up here, and he says the instance is ready. You click ready, and it sends you into your own zone. All right. So here I am, and I am all alone. Mobs all up, right? Good thing about Hero's Journey as well is you can see the mobs on your map, right? As long as they're within range, you can see what mobs are up. So, but as you can see here, I am in my own instance. with a mob full of zones. So you don't have to worry about camps. You don't have to worry about other people KSing you. All that stuff that um, if you're coming from the TLP, it's like a pick, but it's your own private pick. The difference between non-respawning and respawning is, as you can see here, the lockout time for non-respawning is 14 hours, but they come with the bosses up. So this is how you do your progression, and I'll touch on that a little bit. Um, Respawning is a little bit different. It's the same process. You hail the guy, hit respawning, and then you get, say ready, and then he sends you into your own uh, dynamic zone is what they're called. And no bosses up for respawning, but the mobs respawn, right? So if you want to take your character and you just hit like level 30 or something like that, and you run yourself over to Guck, and you see that there's a bunch of people there, you don't have to worry about Guck being camped because you talk to this guy, you set up a respawning zone, and then you can farm frog locks to your heart's content, right? Um, yeah, it's great. Respawning is usually used for leveling and grinding experience and stuff like that, and then non-respawning is for when you want to farm bosses. There's a 14-hour lockout period because, yeah, you have to wait 14 hours in between killing bosses, right, for loot. So that's how they make it so you're not able to just farm the same boss over and over and over again like 5 times a day or 10 times a day, right? Um, so yeah, that is the dynamic zone feature. Super worth it. A lot of times at the beginning when you're starting out, you might not necessarily need to use it, but once you get into if you go to popular spots like Guck, you'd probably want to, or you know, you'll just have to check it out. If there's people there killing and you don't want to fight for experience, just yeah, make your own zone. So it's pretty nice. Okay. So next, what I want to get into is items and the different types of items that you can get. So as you're going about your journey, the hero's journey, you'll see different types of items, right? So this acrylic handled broadsword that I have, it says enchanted next to it and it has blue text. That is like an an enchanted version of this sword, right? So you can find other weapons or any other item that's just its base stats, right? So this dark blade of the warlord I have is green. You can find this same weapon, and it's a random, it's an RNG thing, right? But you can find this same item at enchanted, or if you look at my other items, or at legendary. Now, the difference between the three types, is green is a base. That's just the base stats. Enchanted usually doubles up on all of the stats. So this Dark Blade of the Warlord at the next level will probably be, something silly like 76 damage or 100, all of these stats will go up. And then legendary will be those same stats on enchanted, except you get heroic stats thrown in there. The heroic stats are these orange numbers next to it. I'll get more into heroic stats like towards the end of it because it's a little bit more com not complicated, but it's more like advanced, right? Um, so that is basically the three levels of items, right? Now you're given a power source slot. My Gauntlets of Disruption Enchanted is in my power source slot. You can have one item in there that your character can equip. You can have one item in there going at all times. And what it does is, as you kill, mobs will level this item up for you. So on this character, for example, I got a lot of green items, but I could go and farm experience to level them up to legendary. Like I got these arm guards of the brute normal, and I leveled them up to legendary. Same thing with like these boots; they're legendary now. So they do bind them to your character, so you won't be able to trade them any longer. But I'll kill something, and you can see like this Temple Patrol. I'll kill him. So you can see down here, on top of me gaining experience, it says your Gauntlets of Disruption absorbs energy glowing brightly, 37.20%. So that's how much longer. I'm 60% away from this thing leveling up to legendary, right? So gives you some options, even if you don't get a great, a legendary drop, and you really want it to be legendary, you can start leveling it up. And it's recommended to have something leveling there at all times because, might as well. So that is the three levels of items, normal, enchanted, and legendary, how you level them up. There's also a consume item AA in the special tab here, and you you'll probably tend to use this more early on if you're farming in like the same area or whatever. But if you have a second item of that type, so like if, for example, if I had another Gauntlets of Disruption, I could pick it up and then click on this consume item AA, and it would charge up the item that I'm leveling, right? So it gives it, 6% onto the level, right? So you can do that, and I did that a lot early on, especially with like bronze armor that drops everywhere. Um, so that's a good way to also level. I wouldn't say a good way, but it's another way that you can level your items. Is with the consume item. Now, if you're just starting out, you can use the Bazaar as well. So there are tons and tons and tons of items out there that a normal character would have no business getting. So, for example, I'll just type /Bazaar, and let's say I am a warrior and I wanted to get some good warrior weapons. Well, let's see. What are some good warrior weapons, Chris? How about Blade of Carnage? So someone's selling a Blade of Carnage for 490. You might not have that, but you can, do the filters and stuff. So I'm a warrior and I'm looking for, let's say, a one-hand slashing. Hit enter, and you can find people selling like this right here, Ancient Prismatic War Sword. This guy's selling for 14 platinum. It shouldn't take you very long to get 14 platinum to be able to buy, items off of the Bazaar here. I'll go even one further and just type in Ancient Prismatic. So you can see that prices aren't super high for particular items. This is another way, especially if you're just starting out, what I recommend, at least for armor pieces. There's a lot of Plane of Time gear that sells for super cheap. Like, oh man, I'm pulling some. So what is it? Ring of Force, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Ring of Force. So look at this. I mean, this guy is selling a Ring of Force for 25 platinum. I mean, look at the stats on that, right? So you can get, there's no level requirements. Big, big, big caveat there. So you could buy this for a level 1. This Ring of Force for 25 plat is enchanted, right? So you can get all of these stats, Play around on the auction house, or the auction house, play around on the Bazaar, find items for cheap. A lot of times in general chat, people are like giving away items, so be on the lookout there. And a lot of times, if you need help or you're looking for, you know, the chat, there's tons of people on here that are willing to help and, give items and stuff like that. It might help. I would definitely recommend twinking out your character your first go through so that you can get like a feel um, for, what's going on in the game. and then you can like refine your characters after that, right? So that was a brief thing on items. I'm gonna go into some of the stats on the items, while we're talking about it. Uh, big a big stat that most classes rely on, or not rely on, but it affects them in the most, I would say, is spell damage and healing. So now my gear is like end game gear, so you're not going to find a whole lot of um, stuff early on. But I mean, if you are getting stuff off the auction house, you should be able to get this. But usually, let me back up. How spell power works and how healing works is I have 666 Mark of the Beast damage and 696 heal. Now what that does is anytime that I cast a spell or a weapon effect goes off, it adds that number to whatever I'm casting, right? So my particular character relies all on weapon procs. So you can see here, this is an area of effect weapon. So it has an effect while I'm swinging it. There's a chance that Word of Pain goes off, which is an area of effect 29 damage. Well, with my extra 666, that 29 damage is now 690 or whatever, right? So I'm able to kill a bunch of stuff all at once. Same thing with this offhand. This offhand has Serpent Bite, which is a life tap for 100. Well, now it's a life tap for 766. Okay, so if you're playing a class that cast spells, if you're playing a class that has weapons that have procs on them, spell power is a huge stat, and then healing in the same way. It's exactly what you think it is. It adds that number to whatever heal you're casting. Um, so yeah, so those are um, two big stats that you want to focus on. The other one is attack, obviously. I don't, but if you're familiar with EQ, you don't have to necessarily understand what attack is. It's just it makes you hit more frequently, and yeah, you know, successful melee attack, right? So now I briefly touched on heroic stats, and you probably won't have to necessarily worry about it until the end game, but I'll just briefly touch on it. Um, these gold stats next to my strength, stamina, agility, and all that, these come only from legendary items, and each of them does something. So strength, for example, every 1 point of heroic strength, I get an extra percentage of swing damage, of just auto attack damage, which means, and it starts to scale down after 100 or whatever, but just for training purposes, my character does an extra 172% white damage, right? So my auto attack damage, which is huge. All of them have relatively, um, they have similar type things, like I'm not actually sure what wisdom and int does, but it's probably like mana regen and mana and stuff like that. Dex and agility both give you some defensive things. There's a list, and I'll make sure to put like I'll put like the websites and stuff that you can reference, but they're on the actual wiki. You can look up all of the heroic stats. Once you're comfortable, you can look up the heroic stats and see kind of what they all do. Um, but that ultimately is gear, and the differences between live and this server is the three levels of items, the stats, so like damage and healing, and then the heroic stats that you get. Um, a lot is basically similar. I mean, this sword has the same proc in live or whatever. This range slot that I have has remove greater curse. So everything is basically the same. There's just a little bit of extra layering on top of that. So if you're familiar with items in EQ, you'll be able to find them on here, and you might be able to get them at better quality, and yeah. So that is items. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna go into is like progression. So when you start the game, I just did my Bazaar and back. I have my Bazaar and back set to East Commonlands. You can change it to East Commonlands if you want to. You can talk to this guy, Son of Tyrell, hail him and say, I want to. But um, so let me actually go to the Bazaar. It'll be a little bit better. But when you first start, fresh character, you're only going to have access to the classic zones. Now, in order to unlock Kunark, you can check what the progression is. And it requires you killing, I mean, I know offhand, but it requires you killing Nagafin and Vox. What? Kill dragons by yourself? Nah, you'll get it once you get there. Um, if you hit Alt N, it's a good feature in the game. It'll pop up the story window, and then within the story window, you can see there's progression guides. You can see um, just like an overview, classic epic quests, faction-based conflict, the original max cap of 50, right? If you click on progression 1, you'll see there's two routes that you can go. Most people go the hero route, or you can go the explorer route. But so it says here, kill the following bosses to progress: Lord Nagafin, found in Solus XI; Lord Vox, or Lady Vox, found in Permafrost. Right? You can go back, and then once you're in Kunark, what does it say here? It gives you a little bit of a little synopsis on what's going on. Kill the following bosses to progress: Gorner, Severilis, Talendor, Trachanon, right? So once you kill these 4 dragons, then you progress to Velios. Well, what about Velios? Okay, Velios says Woshi, Zlandikar, Klandikar, Kelerekdar, and Dozakar, right? So all these dragons. That is how you unlock and you continue to progress your account. So this is account wide. Once again, most things are account wide. The Explorer route I actually have never done, but it's usually collecting items at a legendary level. So to progress into Kunark, you need to get an Elemental Binder legendary, a Jaren's Amethyst Ring legendary. You got to find these items, and then once you gather them, you hand them to the NPC in the bazaar. The NPCs are here. So here's the Kunark flag. Here's the Velios flag. I think the Lukland flag is up here somewhere. But I would recommend just doing the hero route. Just kill the dragons and stuff. It's more fun that way, I promise. So that's progression. Let's see. Yeah, I could talk about. Well, like I said at the beginning, you get all AAs from all 3 of your classes. A lot of combos in here. But yeah, I'll leave AAs up to another video because that's getting a little bit into the weeds a bit. But just a couple more things in closing. I mean, that's basically it. So pet classes, you can have 3 pets out. So if you're a necromancer, a beast lord, and a mage, you can have all 3 of those pets summoned at the same time. You can command them individually or all together if you want. If you type /pet, you can see down here in the chat bar all of the commands that you got. So you can do like /pet attack all, which has all of them, or you could do /pet taunt mage or MAG for mage, and that would just have just your mage pet taunt as opposed to your other pets. So that's interesting. I mean, it's a pretty strong combo, the 3 pet classes. So it's just something to note. You can't have 3 pets on this server. Augments. Augments you won't necessarily have to worry about until the end game, but there are ways to get augments. Certain zones like Guck have really rare augments and Howling Stones and stuff like that, but I mean they work the same way. You just stick them in your items. Um, yeah, I think that basically um, summarizes all of just like basic information. There's kind of a little bit more intermediate stuff in there, like heroic stats. But for the most part, once you start, you definitely want to hit up the bazaar, do your starting quests. Alt Q, do your starting quests, and um, that should guide you. See, the second quest you get after finishing your first quest is defeat Lady Lord Nagafin and Lady Vox, right? So if you just follow along with the quests, it'll get you into Kunark. Um, from there, it's kind of got to go explore and stuff like that. But ultimately, what I recommend is just kind of doing what you're used to. If you're familiar with EverQuest, start your character up, get your three classes going, um, get your spells, whatever you need. Do your first quest. Go to this map, and then pick whatever starting zone you want to start in. Um, Ixars and stuff like you, even though it's classic, you'll be able to go to like the Field of Bone. You won't be able to like go to over there though, so you're gonna be stuck in Field of Bone, and I think like Kern's Castle or Kern's or whatever. But you if you're familiar with the game, pick your starting zone, start there, go to Crushbone, do whatever, start leveling up. Um, you can port back to the bazaar to sell your stuff, to buy new spells. Um, you can check out the map here to see if there's places that you want to visit, like Unrest. Like I went all the way over to Dagnor's Cauldron to get my Unrest um, waypoint. Um, but yeah, that should get you going pretty well. There's not really a whole lot else to talk about. Um, at any point, you can shut off experience to get AAs, but I wouldn't recommend doing that until you're at least over level 30. And you know the rate at which you get experience is or AA experience and just experience in general is based on what color they are, not necessarily what level they are. So red mobs give the most, yellow give the least, etc., etc. Um, yeah, I would say that just about covers it. I'll put some useful like website links and stuff like that. There's eqdb.net, I think it is the database that's left. There was a couple, now there's just one, but um, definitely join the Discord. There's a lot of helpful things that you can find in there. People that have been playing a long time. If you have questions, you can usually just search, a couple of keywords or whatever and get your question answered. But yeah, get started. Just get your three characters, click on the map, start leveling, start playing around. You know, don't be afraid to start a new character, to try out some different class combos and all that. And don't be afraid to check the bazaar for cheap items. And don't be afraid to, ask for help if you're stuck or if you need buffs or whatever. People are pretty cool on here. So yeah, I think that's it. I appreciate everybody sticking around and checking me out, and I appreciate you trying out the Hero's Journey. It's been like a super awesome experience. I've been playing for God now like 6 months, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. So, um, if you are new, welcome. It's a fun experience, and yeah, if anybody has questions too, feel free to hit me up in game. I've been playing mainly on this character solo kid, or just leave a comment, whatever. Yeah, people are super cool. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you, and peace out.